Hello and welcome back to my humble show. I am your host for today and every other day, the Articulate Thinker. Hopefully, here to bring you art articles and articulation straight from Articulation Station, so be sure to like, subscribe, and enjoy the ride. Don't forget to turn on those bell notifications while you're at it. If you like it, put a ring on it. Sharing is caring. All that other good stuff. My style is cramped because my cat is camped out in my lap. I'm on my lunch break as per usual. Don't have a lot of time left. But I want to talk about the speaker's race, the one-man race over in the House of Representatives, of course. Jim Jordan is in the lead, but how far will he get? Oh, let's see. There are many other things to talk about, but I don't have time to talk about those things. I could talk about the latest in regards to Donald Trump's election case in D.C. Some news having to do with Judge Chutkan and Attorney Smith, Jack Smith, that is. Some, gag order has been placed upon Donald Trump. And that has been raising some opinions, if not... Sorry, I have cat hair on my microphone. No surprise. Sorry about that. It's itching my nose. Where was I? I don't remember, so I'm just going to carry on. There's also news about, Joe Biden's classified documents case, which isn't really much of a case, though maybe it should be. I might talk about that in the near future if I have time to do so. Well, not in this show, but at some point. And as for the ongoing war in Israel, or shall I say, in Gaza at this point, it's a mess. And I haven't talked about it too much, but a lot continues to happen, and half of it turns out to be inaccurate, or at least in the way that it's covered. Seems like every time a story comes out, it takes about 5 different twists and turns before you learn the actual truth of the matter. Now, I've talked about this war, the initial terrorist attack, and the following events a couple of times, but it has been going on more than a week at this point. And yeah, it's a lot to look at, a lot to think about, and I will speak about it as I have done in the near future. But hey, I keep saying that. So let me just focus on the here and the now. I'm going to now share this headline from The Hill with you so we can get up to speed on this situation over in the House of Representatives. Jordan seeks to sway members his way in speaker vote. Live coverage from The Hill. Blah, 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 blah. House Republicans are aiming to hold a House vote, a full House vote, since there have been smaller votes already, but a full House vote at noon Tuesday, tomorrow, to elect the Speaker. Their nominee, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, is gaining momentum as he tries to lock down support. You might wonder what happened to Steve Scalise. That is a good point. He was essentially appointed. He was voted the next speaker, or the potential next speaker, just last week in a closed-door vote that was taken. And he backed out afterwards. He withdrew his name from nomination station. He wasn't going to have the votes because at the time it seemed that more people favored him as opposed to Jim Jordan, but more were ultimately going to be absolutely opposed to him being Steve Scalise. But I don't know if it was the best job for him anyways because of his cancer. But yeah. What do you think about that? What do you think about this latest in regards to Jim Jordan? Do you think he is fit to sit as the Speaker of the House? I think he's probably the best option, the best bet at this point. Well, he's really the only one at this point. But, yeah. Jordan won the nomination with 124 votes within the GOP conference and then claimed 152 votes when members were asked if they would support him on the House floor, leaving him short of the 217 votes he needs to get the gavel. So is he going to come up short? And if so, is he going to be a good sport? But yes, won the nomination with 124 votes within the GOP conference and then claimed 152 votes when members were asked if they would support him on the House floor in the ultimate vote. But yes, still coming up short. However, he has been winning over some additional Republicans. It says here, Jordan has been working to sway those skeptical of the fast-talking hardline Ohio Republican. At the same time, the crisis in Israel has not abated, and the U.S. is barreling toward its next shutdown deadline, all while the House closes in on 2 weeks without a speaker, which the Biden administration and the Democrats in Congress continue to point out. The irony there is that more Democrats voted to vacate the Speaker's position than Republicans. So you had 8 Republicans who voted Kevin McCarthy out and left the Speaker seat empty. Of course, at the same time, you had 208 Democrats who voted to remove Speaker Kevin McCarthy. And therefore, there's currently no speaker and no way to pass legislation. So I just find it hilarious when the Democrats, Joe Biden especially, are talking about how they need to get their act together. They can't even get along with each other. They don't even have a speaker. Rah! Yeah, that's because you voted with 8 Republicans in order to vacate the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. We got to find a new one, though. And that is up to the Republicans. They got to get their stuff together. That much is fair. Jordan builds speakership momentum as opposition falls. And I do have some tabs pulled up here on those Republicans, remaining Republicans who oppose him. That is changing at a moment's notice because some of them have changed their minds and now find him fit to sit as the next Speaker of the House. I saw this earlier from the typical liberal here on X. Said the rhinos who are still refusing to vote for Jim Jordan. If one of these is your congressman, call them now. Demand they vote for Jim Jordan. Personally, I think the term rhino is stupid. It's like people are allowed to disagree. Again, they got to get their stuff together, but I think the term rhino is thrown around a little bit too carelessly. And besides, the moment they then change their vote, change their mind, and agree with you, then I guess they're no longer rhinos. So as long as they agree with you, then it's all good. Don Bacon. Vern Buchanan, who has changed his mind and therefore his vote. Tom Cole. Mario Diaz-Balart. Carlos Jimenez. Drew Ferguson. Frank Lucas. John Rutherford. Mike Simpson. Rob Whitman. Steve Womack. Ken Buck. Some of those are not going to change their mind, most likely. I mean, they might even prefer a Democrat speaker over Jim Jordan. Why exactly? I'm not sure. I did pose the question, what are their reasons for refusing? Have they specified? To which the typical liberal responded, yeah, it's all rhino cuck bleep for the most part. Okay, not a very specific answer. I was asking for specifics and you provided none. So thanks for nothing. But hey, back to his original post here. You can see the states they're from. Yeah, and like I said, well, as you can see here, or at least here, Vern Buchanan has changed his mind and his vote. But let me pull up this thread from Benny Johnson. He basically just reiterates all the names I just read off for you. He also says, representatives from these states are currently preventing Jim Jordan from becoming Speaker. Most of these are red states that Donald Trump won in 2020. I don't think a single Republican from these states opposes a Jim Jordan speakership. Huh? Really? So not a single Republican from these states opposes Jim Jordan's speakership. It's just the representatives. That's what Benny Johnson is claiming. I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. Of course, there are Republicans in those states who wouldn't support Jim Jordan, or at least would be reluctant to. Members of Congress should represent the views of their constituents. If you are from these states, call your representative and tell them how you feel. But I would agree, for the most part, with the notion that these representatives should actually represent their constituents. And if they don't, then it's up to the constituents to vote them out next time they get the opportunity. But you see here, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Florida, Georgia, Virginia, Arkansas, Idaho. I see Vern Buchanan is still on the list there. But about that, breaking, Florida Congressman Vern Buchanan endorses Jim Jordan for House Speaker. As for the mention of Trump Republicans, well, if you'll recall, Donald Trump, right off the bat, aside from the speculation about him being the next Speaker of the House, which was nonsense in my view, he put out a strong statement in favor and an endorsement of Jim Jordan. And then, of course, shortly after that, Steve Scalise picked up more votes in that initial vote behind closed doors in the House. So some of the takeaway from that was that Donald Trump doesn't exactly have a history of winning at this point. It seems like those whom he endorses end up losing oftentimes, and that temporarily was the case. But then, of course, Scalise dropped out of the race and left it up to, Jim Jordan and those who support him and those who will support him by tomorrow. Hopefully. Okay, so one step closer, says Representative Matt Gaetz, who set this whole thing off in the first place.
Just got breaking news as we've been in this program. Florida Congressman Vern Buchanan publicly announces his support for Jim Jordan. So that's outstanding. Vern Buchanan, great guy, super generous guy, just one of the warmest hearts you could ever hope to encounter. Now supporting Jim Jordan. Let's hope that the dam breaks with some of my other Florida colleagues who still aren't there yet. Again, we want to encourage them in the most respectful and thoughtful way, because we want to see Jim Jordan get that gavel, assume the speakership, and unite this Republican caucus one step closer, just as we've been talking with Vern Buchanan.
Okay, I'm not the biggest respecter of Matt Gaetz. He claimed that the reason why he wanted to oust Kevin McCarthy in the first place was because Kevin McCarthy was dishonest or something like that. I don't personally feel that Matt Gaetz even has the highest standard when it comes to honesty. I mean, not too long ago, he was shrugging off all the lies of George Santos like it wasn't a big deal. Like lying wasn't really a big deal. Even more recently, very recently, in fact, he was shrugging off lies from Lauren Boebert. Of course, that was a dramatic story, so he could have just stayed out of it altogether. But he just shrugs off lies so many times. But then he wanted to act like there's this one guy, Kevin McCarthy, who needed to go because he was lying, according to Matt Gaetz. But seeing as how Matt Gaetz is enthusiastic about Steve Scalise, who most of the people who considered Kevin McCarthy to be a rhino consider Steve Scalise to be a rhino, and yet Matt Gaetz was just fine with the prospect of him being the next speaker. He's fine with the prospect of Jim Jordan being the next speaker. And by the way, both of those two men supported Kevin McCarthy. So there's that. But Matt Gaetz is fine with pretty much anyone being the next Speaker of the House. Anyone except for Kevin McCarthy, which makes it seem like it was just personal, which I believe it was, because Kevin McCarthy hadn't been very supportive of him on some things in the past in regards to allegations which were against him. Yeah. And investigations into him. So that seems like it was all set off in the first place because of personal opinions, personal feelings, the personal feelings of Matt Gaetz. But here we are, and he's just another politician. I don't have any less respect for him than any of the others, just that, it's all kind of political theater. But he was reposting this thread from Representative Vern Buchanan, as he mentioned, who said, "Just received a call from Jim Jordan and had a very productive conversation." Well, he says conservation. I think he meant to say conversation. "I informed him that I will be offering my support on the House floor." Oh, what do you know? He's no longer a rhino, is he? Because he agrees. "While I have always said that Jim is a good friend, I am deeply frustrated by the way this process has played out." Yeah, fair enough. He also adds, "However, I believe the future and immediate well-being and security of our country is too important, and the need for Republicans to move forward united is greater than ever." How clever. Also this on Representative Mike Rogers. See, there were some who changed their minds, changed their votes, upcoming votes, before this list was made, or these lists by Benny Johnson and the typical liberal here. So some of the names you didn't see on there, I now have some tabs pulled up about. This from Simon Atiba. "Breaking your reaction. Representative Mike Rogers," representative who is Republican, obviously, and from Alabama, says he has now decided to support Jim Jordan for Speaker of the House. He wrote, "Jim Jordan and I have had two cordial, thoughtful, and productive conversations over the past 2 days. We agreed on the need for Congress to pass a strong NDAA appropriations to fund our government's vital functions and other important legislation like the Farm Bill." Fair enough. I don't have any issue with any of those things. "As a result, I have decided to support Jim Jordan for Speaker of the House on the floor. Since I was first elected to the House, I have always been a team player and supported what the majority of the Republican conference agrees to. Together, our Republican majority will be stronger to fight Joe Biden's reckless agenda for America." The Bidenomics of it all. And here is a photo of Mr. Rogers. Welcome to his neighborhood, his neck of the woods. Anyways, have another tab, another thread pulled up about him. Also, this one, once again, is from Benny Johnson. Benny Johnson gets on my nerves, but he provides a lot of content. And it is just a screenshot of the quotes I just read from Mike Rogers. But yes, he does indeed support Jim Jordan at this point. So props to Jim Jordan for reaching out and connecting with those who oppose him, or at least are or have been reluctant to endorse him and therefore vote for him. I think that's something that Kevin McCarthy might have failed to do in the end. He wasn't really reaching, I don't want to say across the aisle, but across his own aisle. He wasn't working with some of the people who weren't really willing to work with him. And I think that hurt him in the end. Maybe he could have won over some more people and prevented himself from being ousted. Of course, that's all water under the bridge at this point, but I did hear that there was a failure to communicate. What we have here is a failure to communicate. That's a terrible impression of Major Payne. What we have here. That's even worse. That's like Grandma. I've forgotten what Major Payne even sounded like. My business is killing it. And business is good. I can't remember what his voice sounds like. I remember the quotes, but not what he sounds like. Okay, I just went off on a completely different side tangent there. Pardon me. Just in, Representative Mark Rogers has just announced he will be supporting Jim Jordan for Speaker. flipping his no vote to a yes. This is huge. Keep putting pressure on your representatives and demand they support Jim Jordan for Speaker. So are they flipping because of pressure and all the calls from their constituents? Or are they just in communication with Jim Jordan? Just need a little bit of reassurance. Either way, could be a combination. Here's where we are. And let's see the timestamps on some of these posts, because these have been rolling in throughout the morning. October 16th, bright and early this morning, 6:49 a.m. on the post from Nick Swerter about Mike Rogers. I imagine they're all in that time frame, since people were saying breaking news at the time. And there was this from Joey Manarino. Representative Ann Wagner, who put on an entire show about never voting for Jim Jordan for Speaker, has just changed her mind and said she will be voting for Jim Jordan. Who would have thunk it? The establishment has realized that they lost this round and need to give the people what they want. Or we would continue to request our representatives vacate speakers until we got a decent one. Now hold the vote and let's get the most conservative House Speaker of all time elected. Now that would just be icing on the cake of the Democrats. Well, not their preferred icing, but it would be icing because of the decision they made to agree with the very Republicans whom they'd been calling extreme MAGA Republicans, those 8 Republicans in the end. You know, all the Democrats in Congress and the House sided with them suddenly in order to vacate the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. But now it appears that they could end up with an even more conservative Speaker of the House. So, in their temporarily based lust for having another thing to blame on the Republicans, well, they facilitated a chaos which may just lead to more conservatism, which I'm going to be fine with in the end, personally. It's all very politically theatric, as I said. This from DC Drano. Can you believe this? A Florida Republican won't vote for Jim Jordan because another Florida man supports him. That's not very cash money of you, Representative Rutherford. And he is one of the ones who was on this list here, John Rutherford from Florida. Yeah. And by the way, he's not the only one from Florida. Vern Buchanan and Mario Diaz-Balart from Florida. So it doesn't really even make sense that he wants to vote in opposition to someone from Florida, because there are multiple representatives from Florida, and they're voting or will be voting in multiple directions. So this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Maybe it's the swamp cash he's focused on. Okay, that's a little bit speculative, isn't it? If you want to talk about big pack puppetry or something like that, I guess there's a conversation to be had here. More numbers being put out, phone numbers for the constituents to phone in and have a heart-to-heart talk in order to convince their representatives to change their mind in their votes. But here's this. Melt the phone, says Amy Creamer.
You are on Jim Jordan right now.
Okay, where I'm at right now is since the folks that want to follow the majority, which is the rule, we should follow the majority. Kevin McCarthy had 96%. 4% took him out, joining with the Democrats. Mm-hmm. Now we're in conference where the Democrats don't get the vote, and I'm back with Kevin McCarthy. Since he, out of all of the folks that have thrown their hat in the ring, he is head and shoulders above the rest in the majority that he's able to put together. It was 96%.
And you're a no on Jordan on the floor right now.
I'm a no on allowing Matt Gaetz in the other 7 to win by putting their individual in as Speaker. Okay.
You are on Jim.
Okay, so guess that's Representative Rutherford there. he's making some interesting points about how Kevin McCarthy, technically on paper, has more support than Steve Scalise or Jim Jordan. It's just that in the vote to oust him, the Democrats were allowed to jump on that bandwagon and make it happen. So now that it has happened, and there's a vote that does not include the Democrats, it's just between Republicans. Now, I get what the guy is saying. He's saying, look, according to the votes on the table, if this is about popular opinion of Republicans and representing your constituents, or at least the House as a whole, well, Kevin McCarthy should still be the Speaker of the House, according to the majority of the Republicans there. It's just not going to work out that way. And so some might still try to vote for Kevin McCarthy even. They want to hold on to their support of him. I get that, a little bit of loyalty there. But a little bit of logic too, if you think about it. But it's just, it's not a house of logic at this point. So that's not how it's going to work out. They're basically going along with chaos that the Democrats facilitated, but also it might, ironically or unironically, end up electing an even more conservative Republican. So regardless of how this goes, it kind of is a self-slap in the face of the Democrats. It's just that not a lot of people cover it that way and point out that irony or unirony, if you know what I mean. Like the Democrats, Joe Biden even, they continue to just talk about it as though they haven't even considered the prospect that they're the ones who facilitated all of this. It's ridiculous. They just blame the Republicans for doing something that even more Democrats voted to do. It's like, what gives? Okay, here's something else from Matt Gaetz. I got to wrap this up here in a moment. He said, I personally like Representative Steve Womack, who is another one who is on that list. He is from Arizona. Yeah. Anyways, he said, he has helped me on many matters during my time in Congress, and I will always appreciate that. He is an institutionalist who loves the House. I pray he reconsiders depriving Jim Jordan the speakership in a play to empower Democrats. Okay, so, and that was a repost of this post from Haley Talbot, who said, Womack on CNN, still not backing Jordan. At some point in time, we're going to have to work across the aisle to get a speaker. But yeah, in this ultimate full House floor vote, will any Democrats get on board with that vote? If it's Jim Jordan, likely not. And considering how all of them voted to oust Kevin McCarthy, I don't know why any of them would switch their vote there and then vote to get someone like him reelected to Speaker of the House. But I don't even think he's in the running. It's just that his name has kind of been tossed around. Here's a statement which Jim Jordan made. And by the way, when Steve Scalise looked like he was going to get the nomination and maybe even the ultimate vote, Jim Jordan was supportive of him. But he withdrew, so Jim Jordan has been doing whatever it takes to get that nomination, that vote. He said, Dear colleague. And who did he say this to exactly? Sincerely, Jim Jordan, signed at the bottom. To Congress, I guess. Just a general statement. The principles that unite us as Republicans are far greater than the disagreements that divide us. And the differences between us and our Democrat colleagues vastly outweigh our internal divisions. The country and our conference cannot afford us attacking each other right now. It is time we unite to get back to work on behalf of the American people. I got to go back to work. I'm running late. I'm sure you can find this on his congressional website, the rest of the statement. I just wrote a little bit of it there. I see the names of Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise. Let me read this line. We've discussed frustrations about the treatment of Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise and the events of the past month. You've been honest and open, and I appreciate the candid conversations. In these conversations, we've also discussed your thoughts on how we can best move forward. We must move forward. Well, you can also find the statement on his X account. By the way, he is chairman of the Judiciary Committee, so that's going to switch things up over there. Somebody else is going to get that seat, I imagine, since he won't be able to be there and Speaker of the House at the same time. And here's a clip of him, something from Bridget Gabriel, who I'm not the biggest fan of, but yeah, here's a clip for more context.
Ann Wagner and Mike Rogers publicly saying they would support us, two great members who do all kinds of great work. So that was really, really big. So I feel real good about the momentum we have, and I think we're real close. So the vote's going to be tomorrow.
Will you go to the floor even if you don't have 217 votes
locked down? That's how our great system works, and we will go to the floor tomorrow. It's not about pressuring anybody. It's just about we got to have a speaker. You can't open the House and do the work of the American people and help our dearest and closest friend Israel if you don't have a speaker. So we get the speaker, we get the House open, and we get to work on the resolution and supplemental for Israel, and we get back to work for the American people. And that's what I'm committed to doing, and I think it's going to happen tomorrow.
Because you had said before you want to have 217 first.
Well, I do think that's ideal, but as one of my colleagues said in the room, I don't know if there's any way to ever get that in the room. Mm-hmm. I would love that, but I think the only way to do this is the way the founders intended, is you have the vote tomorrow. We've set it for 12 o'clock, and I feel real good about it.
Will you have more than one ballot if you don't get to 217 on the first?
We're going to elect the speaker tomorrow. That's what I think is going to happen.
Okay, so he's confident in himself.
We got to come together. We have to unify. We have to come together.
And he says they have to come together, and I would agree with that if they're going to get anywhere. If they're going to get anywhere with funding for Israel or whatever other package happens to be passed or in the process of being passed through Congress, regardless of which side of all of that you take. One more clip for you. I got to start shutting down. But here's this from Kevin McCarthy. Not that anyone cares what he has to say about it at this point.
My focus is to get Jim Jordan elected Speaker, get this Congress back moving again. Right. It's one thing to get elected, it's another thing to govern. Look, I realize how difficult it is. It took me 15 rounds. We were very successful in those times of being Speaker. First time a Republican majority has passed a border security bill all the way back to Ronald Reagan. Right. We passed a bill to make us energy independent, Parents' Bill of Rights. We cut more than $2 trillion. When the Republicans were in the majority, they actually added $1 trillion of spending. So, I mean, we've had a lot of successes. We've got to find a way to get back instead of allowing 8 people for personal purposes to join Democrats to disrupt America.
They look worse every day, in my opinion,
Yes.
every day. Number two is I give you credit because a lot of people would have went back to their town in California and said, hey, everything I did, I'm done. You guys figure it out, but you're still working it out. Congressman and Mr. Speaker, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And remember, I will never give up. I care.
All right, enough of that. That was Kevin McCarthy on with Brian Kilmeade earlier. I got to go back to work. Thanks for watching. Keep in touch. Keep in tune. New content is coming soon. Peace.